This is Caravan to Midnight, the John B. Wells program. Here is John B.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, those who have not lost their sense of wonder, their desire to find out what exactly is going on. We're going to welcome on to Caravan to Midnight for the first time, Patricia. She's up in the land of the midnight sun. She is a wife, a mother of three, an Alaskan national, common law Bible study group leader, former business owner, founder of Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition, 2014 candidate for Lieutenant Governor, State of Alaska, project manager of Free Schaeffer Cox Project, and a friend of Schaeffer and his family, first-hand witness to events leading up to Schaeffer Cox's arrest. But what was he arrested for? Well, you're familiar with the syndrome of shall we say, government domineering, official pressure, government intimidation, and so forth. We know that it's happened. You see what happens. Anytime the federal government gets involved or anytime they have an agenda they want to put forward, what happens? It's like this whole thing in Orlando. Look at this picture. This picture of all these emergency vehicles all neatly lined up with their lights flashing. Look at this picture and tell me the first thing that pops into your mind. Drill. Even Paul Craig Roberts has said false flag. When Dr. Roberts calls something a false flag, there's a good chance that that's exactly what it is. Now, in the case of Schaeffer Cox, he has been a political prisoner of the Obama administration. He is 30 years old, and his only crime is believing in the Second Amendment and that the government should obey our Constitution. Oh, my goodness, he is a radical, isn't he? So without further ado, here is Patricia coming to us from the beautiful state of Alaska. How you doing?
Great, John. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you with us. We're just going to sit around and talk like we've known each other for a long time, and just give us all you got. Who is Schaeffer Cox, and what is his problem? Because it appears to be a pretty big one.
Well, he's been held in Marion, Illinois, at the CMU, which is Communications Management Unit, and he was recently released from there without any kind of information as to why he was being let out. He's been let out into the general prison population. But the question, about who is he, is really the question that people, want the answer to. And he basically was our best and brightest here in Alaska. And you kind of have to go back in your mind to 2008. And Schaeffer was just getting going in Alaska. He was running for the state house. In 2008, it was before Obama was president. Ron Paul was running for president. And it was before the Tea Party movement started, and Sarah Palin hadn't been selected to be McCain's vice presidential pick yet. So it was a while back. I mean, if you think back to just before Obama was elected, you have to kind of reframe in your mind what was going on. So Schaeffer was running for state house and trying to get the word out about what the Fed was. Because people didn't realize that was a private banking cartel at the time. And I'll take people back a little bit to 2008, what was going on in the political climate in the country at the time. Obama hadn't been elected president yet. The Tea Party movement hadn't started up. Sarah Palin hadn't become a household name at the time, but Schaeffer wanted to run for state house because he was really concerned about the direction the government was going. He was 24 years old, and he just about took out the incumbent. He was within 100 votes of taking out this pretty popular incumbent, but he lost the election. But he just kept going. He was very, very interested in teaching people about the Federal Reserve. And at that time, even activists weren't really aware of what the problem was with the private banking cartel. So Schaeffer was interested in talking about economics. But we live in Fairbanks, and nobody really cared to talk about economics. They wanted to talk about the Second Amendment and the prospect of losing their guns. And so Schaeffer basically always had a great attitude about, working with people. People love him and love to work with him. He's got lots going on as far as being an organizer and an activist. He's a great communicator. But he did have the wherewithal to move things in a different direction in the country. So he was down speaking in the western United States, and he gave a speech in Montana on December 1st of 2009, and that attracted the attention of the federal government. And basically they decided that there needed to be an investigation opened on Schaeffer. So that's apparently what they did do. And so the way I look at the entire case is that this is a First Amendment case. A lot of people think it's a Second Amendment case because of later on he started a militia, but what he said in Montana was that not only do you have to be willing to die for your country, but you have to be willing to basically to do battle. That is one thing that he said in his speech. But when the government was parsing his speech, they left out some of the most important parts of the speech that talked about where he was going to put his efforts. Because if you keep in mind that he was talking to people that were concerned, they were Second Amendment activists, and they were concerned about losing their guns, and all of the things that you mentioned in your prologue about Ruby Ridge and about all the groups that are characterized as hate groups and militia groups. Those people, Schaeffer realized that there was going to be a messaging problem. And so that if we wanted to talk about the health of our country and the health of taking back, depending on how you characterize it, maybe you want to think about taking back your states and think of your states as republics in a federation, as it was at the founding. Anyway, talking about the health of the republics, you don't want to be characterized as haters. You want to be known as people who are moving in a positive direction. So in that speech, he said about the government, I think it's a wounded bear. I don't think the best of the use of my time and money and energy and fervor is to try to make a wounded bear die faster. I'm going to be putting my energy into cultivating and rebuilding what's going to be next, because they're going to go away and people are going to need something to come to, a skeleton to come to. We have just wonderful, wonderful founding documents. We've got a Declaration of Independence. We've got a Constitution. We've got a shot coming at us faster than we realize to go back to that, and that's where I'm going to put my energy. He was always talking about wanting the militia to be characterized by the things that we love and not the things that we hate. So the basis of that speech that he gave in Montana that caused the FBI to open an investigation on him was the government's falling apart and it's going to come down. We've just got to be ready. So that's really who Schaeffer Cox is.
Well, was anything about his speeches like over-the-top radical to where when people were listening to his speeches or his presentations about an oppressive government and the need to keep and bear arms and being a pro-Second Amendment guy and all of that, was there anything in his speeches that was like alarming to the point where you or I who would think, beat it down a little, pal. That's a little over the top. In other words, did he scare people? It's one thing if you make people mad, and it's another thing if you scare people. But if you make them mad and scare them, they'll come for you. Did this happen? Because he's 30 years old. He's probably not, I mean, I met a lot of really bright 30-year-olds, but some of them are a little short on discretion sometimes and speaking their mind. They haven't learned that discretion is the greater part of valor, and sometimes they pop off. Now, I do know that discretion is the greater part of valor, and I pop off frequently. But be that as it may, did he do anything that scared anybody, in your opinion?
Well, not in my opinion, but we're not asking you to take on my opinion. We'd like people to learn how to spell his name, to go to his website, and the speech is right there available for everyone to listen to. I think the danger really came from the reverse of what you're talking about. It's a message of peace, not like the religion of peace, but it's really a message of love and peace. And he's a homeschool kid, a Christian kid. He was a pro-life advocate. He was the president of Interior Right to Life. So it's just the opposite of that. It's so threatening because it so rings true with people. So people ought to listen to it. And, go to freeschaeffercox.com and go to the Reclaiming Liberty tab and just click on his speech. It lasts an hour and 40 minutes. But this is the federal document 001783, and this is the FBI transcribed the entire speech. So it's all there in black and white. They knew exactly what he was saying and doing. And even as late as March of 2010, the Anchorage U.S. attorney was working with the FBI and talking about the investigation, and the Anchorage U.S. attorney says, no, he has not crossed a line in his statements on between free speech and a viable threat that we could actually send, issue subpoenas on. So, no. Short answer to that question is no. No.
All right. So what happened? So when was he arrested, and what was the charge, or was there a charge under the NDAA that can arrest somebody without a charge, hold them without a charge, without a lawyer, without contact, in an undisclosed location, indefinitely? So what happened?
Well, you remember in 2009, DHS put out a warning, and it was a report called Right-Wing Extremism, Current Economic and Political Climate Fueling Resurgence and Radicalization and Recruitment. And the DHS started working with Southern Poverty Law Center to identify who the haters were. Mm-hmm. And they came up with this idea that there was something called a sovereign citizens movement, and I think that came out of, a patriot misbelief. But anyway, they labeled Schaeffer as a sovereign citizen. He's far too intelligent to use that label to describe himself. And so, I'm not sure where we were exactly at the point between the Patriot Act and NDAA taking effect, but he was not prosecuted under NDAA.
He was or was not?
He wasn't.
Okay.
He was prosecuted. What allowed the federal government to come in and gather information on him was the Patriot Act. And so what happened was that he was, like I said, he was an activist, and so he had Second Amendment meetings in Fairbanks, and these are groups of people that are
okay. Sorry, wait a minute. Okay, please just start that part over again.
Sure. He was a political activist. He was organizing in Fairbanks under the Second Amendment Task Force, and he was able to bring out crowds of 600 or 700 people, which is unheard of here. Ron Paul came up and had about that number in Fairbanks. It's basically a small town. And so Schaeffer and a lot of his supporters decided to put together something called the Liberty Bell system. And the Liberty Bell system is a way to gather people who are being harassed by the police. So if you are stopped, you can call a number. The number puts out an alert, and people in the area can come by and pay attention and watch the cops, maybe film you. And so that Liberty Bell system was attributed to Schaeffer. He did talk about it in his speech in Montana. And so one of the calls that happened here in Fairbanks, Schaeffer showed up to, and he was arrested for not disclosing that he had a firearm to a particular police officer that came up behind him. And so he was brought into court on those charges, and it was a misdemeanor charge. And so he was involved in activism, and then he started getting into situations like the one that we're talking about. So at some point, Schaeffer decided to start the Alaska Peacemakers militia. And his idea was that militias should be just like another nonprofit group. You know, you go out and support community activities, and you call yourself the militia, and you're basically open-hearted about it. You invite people to join you. You have open public meetings. And we're starting to practice the Second Amendment in a way that it has not been, it's not been practiced for a long time. So he wanted the militia, Alaska Peacemakers, to be a group of people that, in case there was a natural disaster, rather than calling a federal National Guard out to help with whatever needed, your neighbors needed help with, then people would feel comfortable and call their local militia. And what this would do is allow the men who live here to stay here in case of, some kind of a need, rather than having them join a military force and then being sent all over the country. So he wanted a local group of people that could respond in emergencies. And once that militia came on board, he really got the title of, right-wing extremist, and the Southern Poverty Law Center has lots of special pages just for Schaeffer about what a hater he is. So this went on, for a couple of years. He was being an activist, making speeches all over the country, really getting people to take another look at the Charter of Negative Liberties that is the Constitution. Really take another look at the Declaration of Independence. Talk about he was talking about the Fed. He was talking about the government going into collapse, and he was bringing people together in a threatening way. And in the meantime, this investigation was ongoing. When the federal government does an investigation, when the FBI is involved, the FBI has confidential human sources and confidential informants. So lots of confidential informants came and infiltrated our Tea Party group and infiltrated the militia. And a couple of names there, Bill Fulton, the FBI set him up in a business in Anchorage, and that was a tactical store called the Drop Zone. And then another believed to be confidential informant working for the FBI was set up with a tactical store here in Fairbanks. That was Aaron Bennett, and he owned Far North Tactical. So what these guys did was And this is kind of where I come in. The Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition was basically a Tea Party group, and we had an office and a bookstore downtown, and we always needed to do fundraising. So these confidential informants came in and volunteered to do a fundraiser for us. And what that fundraiser basically was an excuse to bring Bill Fulton up from Anchorage and foment something that really wasn't in anybody's minds. So that's what happened, and that was in the summer. It was right around the end of June in 2010.
Okay, so just to revisit it, he's being held on what charge?
Okay, right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Conspiracy to murder government agents. Okay, that's the main one. Conspiracy to murder officers and employees of the United States, and that's a 27-year sentence. Then there were some other charges, making a silencer, possession of an unregistered destructive
device. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I say an unregistered destructive device.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And who convicted him? I mean, has anybody? I guess what I'm saying is, has anybody gone to trial yet, or is he just being held under charge?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, he's been sentenced, and he's in prison for this. But he's at the point. The trial was in 2012, and he's not submitted his first direct appeal yet. We're on the direct appeal, and that's due this coming August. August 23rd, I think, is the day that's due. So he will have. They'll be going through his appeal. And the reason for that, usually your appeal happens faster, but his first public defender was anti-gun, and she was really freaked out about the word militia. Anybody who has guns, she's just not a good defender, and she actually said that she wanted Schaeffer indefinitely committed based on his beliefs. And so Schaeffer managed to get rid of that public defender out of Seattle, and then he was reassigned another public defender who really did refuse to really look at this case in a way that could impugn her fellow bar members. If you remember Ted Stevens' case and how that one was prosecuted, this is the same team of prosecutors that went after Schaeffer, and it is a related case, because the reason that Ted Stevens was taken out was because he was going to be in the way of getting Obamacare passed. And so Ted Stevens needed to be impugned, his character needed to be impugned, so that the chances of re-electing him were very slim. And so there was an operation to get Alaska back, and it was called Polar Pen Operation, and this is well documented. There's a book by Sidney Powell, who's a prosecutor she's a federal prosecutor. She's written a book called License to Lie, and it was all about the polar pen sting. It was License to Lie, what means that the federal government, the prosecutors from the DOJ, had the right to withhold exculpatory evidence in Ted Stevens' case. So she wrote the book on it. The Polar Pen operation happened, and then Schaeffer actually came in kind of on the tail end of that. And same team of federal prosecutors, that withheld exculpatory evidence on Schaeffer. And what I mean by that is the example I gave earlier where you talk about his speech, the way he characterized what he wanted to do was not to take the federal government down, not to even spend any time or energy on that, but just to be ready and be prepared for when it did come apart. But they characterized it as something completely different, and when it came time to let the jury in on it, the prosecutors withheld anything that would be exculpatory for Schaeffer, anything that would really let them see who he actually is.
Well, that doesn't sound good. That sounds like the proverbial...
railroading.
Well, yeah, it sounds like the court of kangaroos.
Yes.
By the way, exculpatory evidence is evidence favorable to the defendant in a criminal trial that exonerates or tends to exonerate the defendant of guilt. It is the opposite of inculpatory evidence, which tends to prove guilt. So, can we surmise from this that he did not receive a fair trial?
I guess we call it due process. When we're talking about U.S. citizens, we have a right to due process. And the jury is supposed to hear both sides. They're supposed to hear a good representation of the evidence. One thing he always goes back to is the FBI recorded him for, I don't know, 2 years is what I've heard, including inside his home and under the Patriot Act because they had an investigation on him. So they had lots and lots of material, lots of tape recordings of him. So they would just cherry pick things out of the tape recordings. And he always said, you know, in all of these meetings, they called it the 241 conspiracy. And 241 meant for every one of our guys they take out, we'll take out 2 of theirs. It's kind of the short form of that. So the 241 conspiracy was brought into him by an informant called J.R. Olson, and that was J.R. Olson's idea. So every time J.R. Olson would be taping them, of course he would bring up this idea, what about 241? Why don't we talk about 241? In fact, J.R. Olson said, why don't we make it 341 or 541 for that matter? So this is a federal agent fomenting this kind of talk, and Schaeffer would, you know, try not to alienate the guy, I guess. And he would kind of bring him down off this idea. And in the tapes themselves, you can hear it for yourself. People can listen to these tapes. Anyway, in the tapes, he says, no, I'm not going to pull a Rambo. I'd rather be like Gandhi. And I'm telling you, it's not just, he wasn't just being rhetorical, that was actually always his point of view. He wanted to be characterized by the things that he loved. And he's also fairly committed to something called the non-aggression principle, if you're familiar with that.
Explain to people who don't.
Well, non-aggression principle allows you to defend yourself, but you're not supposed to go out and create a situation or aggress on anyone. So the motto of the Alaska Peacemakers is defend all, aggress none. So purely defensive posture is what non-aggression principle is.
And he subscribed to this doctrine, shall we say?
Definitely, and repeated it over and over. And it's in all the tapes, it's in all his speeches, but the jury never got to hear it. The other thing that was wonderful about this trial, quote unquote, and I'm being sarcastic, lots and lots of people in Fairbanks, like I said, the huge crowd came out to see him, so lots of people got to hear his speeches, and they heard them firsthand. So what actually happened with this was a group of these guys were rounded up and arrested. And they were charged by state of Alaska on all of these crimes. But Schaeffer's lawyer argued that the information gathering and the FBI's investigation violated Schaeffer's Alaskan constitutional right to privacy. And so the state of Alaska had to throw out the entire case. And when it became apparent that the state of Alaska was not going to convict Schaeffer, that's when the federal prosecutors picked it up and decided to charge him under federal rules. And so that information, that investigation, all the materials, all the Patriot Act collected material would be admissible as evidence. But when they did do that, when the federal prosecutors picked it up, they took the trial out of Fairbanks, where people knew him, and he would have the possibility of getting a fair trial, and they put it in Anchorage. So they were able to find plenty of people that had really never known anything about Schaeffer except for maybe what they read in the newspapers.
All right. And who was the prosecutor? Or who is the prosecutor?
Stephen Scrocky is his name.
How do you spell that, do you know?
Yes, Skrocki. And then the one that was the lead attorney prosecuting Ted Stevens was Bottini. And Bottini actually sat in the gallery behind Scrocky and advised him during Schaeffer's trial.
He was the lead attorney against Ted Stevens?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you can see what happened. The reason he wasn't on Schaeffer's case was because there was an investigation into the Ted Stevens trial going on at the time. So he stepped back and pushed Scrocky forward. A really good place where people can go to hear the trial transcripts and see who Scrocky is and hear all kinds of information is on YouTube. There's a channel called Lone Star 1776, and Lone Star is in Texas, and 1776. Great channel. I looked today, they have 215 videos of a variety of things. If the information about Schaeffer gets out, people will be outraged, I think.
Well, it sounds like they ought to be. Now, bring us up to speed on Ted Stevens.
Well, what happened, Ted Stevens was the longest running senator in U.S. history. And I personally didn't support him or that idea. But he was a Republican, and he was the head of the Finance Committee. And so if Obamacare was going to be passed, it was going to have to get through Ted Stevens. And it wasn't going to make it, or at least it wasn't worth the risk of making it through Ted Stevens. So the Obama administration wanted to, or whoever that is who runs the country, but we'll call it the Obama administration, they wanted a Democrat in that seat. So we had a mayor here. The mayor of Anchorage ran, Mark Begich ran for Senate that year, and he was the final vote for Obamacare. So.
And what happened to Ted Stevens?
Ted Stevens died in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, this is Alaska. Everybody's got a private plane, and there's a lot going on with pilot error. But there are suspicious circumstances around that one.
Do you know what they are?
I don't. I do know, though, that there were 3 other legislators that were convicted. They were state legislators here in Alaska, and they were convicted along with Ted Stevens. And they were in prison, and they had much shorter sentences than Schaeffer has, 5 years, 7 years, something like that. But the lawyer, the public defender that was able to overturn their cases is Michael Filipovich, and I believe he is in in Seattle. And Michael Filipovich now is Schaeffer's public defender. So that's a hopeful sign.
And who was the judge in the case?
That was a federal judge that they brought out of retirement. There wasn't a single judge in Alaska that wanted to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole.
Does the judge have a name?
And I'm not remembering his first name, but it is Bryan.
Bryan?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Judge Robert Bryan. He was brought out of retirement, and I did testify in Schaeffer's case because I did have firsthand knowledge of what happened at the fundraiser. And so I didn't realize at the time that I testified that the judge had a hearing problem. And Schaeffer says that a lot of times he wasn't really using his hearing aid. So he says he had a deaf judge. And when he didn't know what to do, I actually had a good friend that did an independent investigation of the trial transcripts, and he said anytime that judge didn't know what to do, he would just ask the prosecutor what he thought, and the judge very often would just do what the prosecutor thought should be done.
Yeah,
So
maybe Judgy Wudgy was a little out of practice.
I think so. Yep. So anyway, that's the story on that aspect of the railroading. It's just about every protected right that we have to a fair trial was violated. I mean, it's like a textbook case of everything that our government promises they won't do.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems to be increasing in frequency. It really does.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. Schaeffer's not the only political prisoner, and this is a really important cause. But there are lots and lots of people that have been railroaded, and it's getting worse, and we're hearing about it because we're so connected now. So.
Wow. So he's looking at
22 more years.
22 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he had a little girl 1 week before they arrested him. His son was only 3 or 4 years old at the time, so he's not seen them for 5 years. He was in the communications management unit. That's a whole nother issue. Just the fact that we have CMUs on American soil. There's a fantastic TED Talk that a guy named Will Potter did about the CMU prisons. And as far as I know, only one man has ever been released from the CMU, and that was a animal rights activist named Andrew Steponin. And he goes out and talks around the country about his experiences in the CMU. But that is a Federal Bureau of Prisons creation, and it's supposed to be, most of the inmates are Arab Muslims convicted of terrorism-related charges. And then there are things called balancers, and Schaeffer's definitely one of the balancers. In order to, quote-unquote, protect the civil rights of these inmates, so that it doesn't look like it's a discriminatory agency, or that they discriminate just against Arab Muslims that are convicted of terrorism. They need to balance that with some non-Muslims. So
Of course. Keep everything politically correct for this. In my opinion, this government is, if it's not completely illegitimate, it'll certainly do until the completely illegitimate government gets here.
basically, yep.
What's a CMU?
Communications Management Unit, and the one at Marion, there's one in Marion and one in Terre Haute, Illinois, and It's a prison inside of a prison.
So, and why? What's the communications management part? Meaning that they're cut off from communications?
Yes, they're not allowed to visit family members. They're not allowed to have have a visit where you could hug your kids or.
Jesus God, what has happened to this country? I mean, seriously, this is just beyond anything. Marion in Illinois is one hell of a rough prison. That's where hardcore bank robbers go. That's where hardcore criminals go.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like this kid who's 30 years old. To me, that's still a kid. I know he's a grown man and all that. Still a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't something less than a maximum security lockup have been appropriate? I mean, to me, this is cruel and unusual punishment.
You're exactly right, and one place you can hear about some of the tactics that are being used is from Kent Hovind, who was dieseled. He would be driven around. I guess Kent Hovind was converting a lot of people to Christianity while he was in prison.
Oh no, that's even worse.
Oh yeah, that's actually, that is the thought crime that I believe this government really is going after. Because, I mean, if you look at the values, limited government, favoring local government instead of a massive centralized government, pro-life, pro-gun, basically pro-Bill of Rights. And if you look at the history of the common law is Christianity. Our founding documents are based on common law. So that's really what they're wiping out, and to me it's just wiping out Christianity. I have a letter here that Schaeffer had written me one time when he was in the basically in solitary, and he says he's sitting on the cell of his floor, wearing nothing but a pair of raggedy old boxers held together with strips of torn bed sheets. I'm writing this with a 1-inch pencil that I sharpened by rubbing on the rough floor. And he talks about Hillary Clinton. I just heard Hillary Clinton campaigning and talking up her new book, Hard Choices. This was June of 2014, so she was doing the soft campaigning at the time, running around the country talking about hard choices. And Schaeffer says, this can also be read as, I'm about to do some ugly things to you people. This is what she had to say about the Second Amendment itself, not about the Second Amendment itself, but about the people who believe in it. She said, we can't let a minority of people, and that's what it is, a minority, we can't let them hold a viewpoint that terrorizes the rest of the population. She didn't say we can't allow crimes. She didn't even say we can't allow guns. She said we can't allow people to hold a certain viewpoint. She actually said it. She actually believes it. It's right there, thought crime. And the thought police have arrived.
And this is Clinton?
That's Schaeffer Cox writing about Hillary Clinton.
Well, I mean, that's next, the thought police. You know, they've been working on that for a long time. They're working on PreCrime now, a la Ted Cruz and his Minority Report, you know. They've been working on that for a long time.
And that's what we're actually talking about here. If you read the trial transcripts or if you listen to what happened at trial, Schaeffer Cox was not convicted for what he did do. He was convicted for something he had the capacity to do at some point in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I despise certain aspects of this country. I really do. But my despising is the exact opposite of some rabble like Bill Ayers, for example, who despises the country. To me, it appears that Bill Ayers and his cohorts despise the country because it's not communist enough.
That's right.
I find the country to have a despicable component because there is too large an element of its citizenry that is impelled toward communism and totalitarianism, while certainly strong allegations, and they may be more than allegations, more than declarations without proof. I think it can be proven to the satisfaction of anybody with an IQ over about, 40, that the Clintons, this scum that simply will not go away, are in fact criminal scum and should be jailed. But instead, they put this guy away. Now, I don't know him. I don't know. He could be the worst human being who ever walked. I don't think so, but I'm saying he could be. There is no evidence to support any such character.
No.
However, in the case of this thing who's running for president, I always use an A instead of an I. President. We want Hillary to be president. It's time for a woman to be president. Really? Well, I think that's true. Just not this woman. Ever. She shouldn't be permitted to run for dog catcher because she'd spend most of her time in the kennel. Anyway, I digress. I'm being ugly. Maybe this constitutes some sort of hateful speech. Well, good, because that's just the way I say it. And the last time I checked, we're free in this country to say what we want. Oh yeah, that's right. There's the problem that Schaeffer Cox had by actually opening his mouth and saying what he felt he was and believed, according to the law of the land, that he was free to do. You know, what I'm saying is this, Maria. If Schaeffer Cox was a complete idiot, I say if, he still is entitled to due process. He's still entitled to be free from what appears to be government oppression, but he's not. He's at Marion in Illinois. Marion, you have no idea what kind of misery awaits some of us at Marion. So now what exactly can we do? Are there any senators or congressmen that have the...
Oh, heck no. Oh, they're not interested in this at all.
Yeah. Well, so
No.
where...
That's not gonna be where we find our solution. The solution is, first of all, find out who he is, and if people have a little bit of time, just listen to his speech, because you can see his heart when he speaks. And that's look at the website Free Schaeffer Cox, find the speech, or just Google or use your browser and find the speech. I think it's called The Solution. And then we do have a group that I run, the Free Schaeffer Cox Project, and we take donations. We have a huge letter writing campaign going on, so people can contribute to hiring a private attorney. We don't believe that the public defenders will get it. And then you can write to Schaeffer. Schaeffer loves to get letters. So, and also the thing that I thought about this morning too was, people just, if they can just pray for Schaeffer, that would be a great thing. If we had, just people that got together and prayed for Schaeffer, and pray for him as you pray for the country, and pray for all the political prisoners, and do what you can, to get these guys. I don't really believe that the federal government is supposed to take any prisoners. I think it's unlawful for them to hold people in cages. But we need to get people, need to remove the scales, basically. They need to have the scales taken off their eyes, and we need to see things for the way they are. So they construed what he was talking about to be some sort of a threat against people in the federal government. Is that correct? That's right. Yep. Conspiracy.
Conspiracy to do what?
To murder. Conspiracy to murder.
And one more time, and just one more time, because I want everybody to get this. That was based on what? What evidence did they have other than this speech?
Well, it was bootstrapping. You know what bootstrapping is?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, he, if you look at, you take a whole bunch of circumstantial evidence and then you create a narrative and you convince the jury that this is what he meant to do.
But he didn't actually do anything, though. I mean,
no. No one was harmed. Nothing and no one was harmed at all. I don't even think I ever got a paper cut. There's nothing there. And in fact, we believe that there may not even be an indictment. He's been doing FOIA requests from where he's at Marion, trying to get the government to give him the indictment, and no true bill was ever returned. So he's not been indicted on this.
Where's a lawyer? I mean, where's a Jerry Spence? Where's Jerry Spence when we need him? Or somebody like him? I mean, where?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody like Jerry Spence, but that was the first thing that my husband ever said was get Jerry Spence on this. What we really need to do, it's a symptom of a greater problem. So he will, when the truth gets out, so will he. I mean, that's what he always says. When the truth gets out, so will I. Because, we've got to have, it's really our beliefs that hold him there, in my opinion. So we are working at hiring a private attorney. We've had a great friend come on. His name is Ed Snook, and I'm just going to show you this U.S. Observer newspaper. Ed Snook has been able to get over 4,200 convictions overturned just by outing these guys. Can you see that, John?
Yeah.
Can you see the picture? That's Stephen Scrocky. That's the federal prosecutor. That's Schaeffer. This is Don Young. So anyway, this U.S. Observer, people ought to find that article. This is kind of our hope, just getting the truth out and doing things like, thank God for you and your show and exposing people and not being afraid to expose this. Alex Jones has had this story and is sitting on it.
I'm shocked.
People need to harangue him, and I don't know if that'll even help. But he did finally come on at the end to get in front of the parade to help Kent Hovind. But we don't need fair weather friends like that. We need people like you, people that'll just agree to listen. That's all we're asking, because that's all we need is we need the truth exposed.
Stay in touch with us. As your attorney, as Mr. Snook is able to, have him reach out. We won't, in the interest of discretion, we'll keep everything on the down low with this. But this appears to be wrong. And the thing that shakes me up the worst is, first you send the guy to an extraordinarily high security prison. Oh, I'm shocked that he wound up in Illinois. There are federal prisons all over the country, but since this was probably orchestrated out of Chicago, you know what I'm getting at here.
Yes,
it's only right that he should wind up in a lockup in Chicago. Look, wrong is wrong. If somebody goes out and makes an idiot of themselves, well, okay, sometimes there's blowback for that. But I think we know that white Christians are an endangered species. And people had bloody well better remember it. Because this isn't some porn, fear, whatever. What do they call it? Fear porn, and what's the other one? Catastrophe.
Yeah.
This isn't some made-up woo-woo crazy stuff. It's like they are coming for your rights. And the longer that you indulge these evil fools. Let me explain something, and I'll be very brief, in deference to the lady's time. Evil is stupid. Always. It cannot be justified. More to the point, it creates nothing. It distorts, twists and perverts something which has already been created. Evil is stupid. Evil exists. Just like this Sandy Hook nonsense. Some little puke at Sandy Hook Justice. That's a technical term, puke. He writes this thing about the vile and depraved conduct of Wolfgang Halbig, this horrible man who's inflicting all this mental trauma on the parents of these dead children. Well, why don't you just show us the parental release forms and he'll shut up about it? But you won't do that, will you? You won't show the dash cam footage, will you? Your own first selectman up there said the Department of Homeland Security put the sign outside the driveway. You know, the state sign, the orange one that you can change what it says on it, the yellow lights and all that. When was it put there, says Halbig's lawyer? 3 days before the event. And who put it there? Well, the Department of Homeland Security. And now here comes this half-baked loon, Jay Johnson, the director of the so-called Department of Homeland Security, and says that gun control is a part of Homeland Security. Now, you know what? I think if we want the homeland secure, we need to flush the Washington toilet. But that's just me. And get all of these rats out and replace them with something that resembles a human being instead of some evil fool that's willing to follow anybody as long as there's a paycheck in it for them or some illusion of a career. No, maybe they'll get their name on a wall somewhere. I'll tell you what wall their name belongs on, the wall of shame. And before I check out a planet Earth, there's going to be one. It's going to make the Georgia Guidestones look really stupid by comparison, because every rat that ever betrayed this country or used the law to crush a human being, to destroy a human being on a mental, spiritual, or physical level, that person's name is going to be on the wall, along with every name of every family member that traces this person in his line or her line. And I mean it. This is just wrong. You reach a point where you just really don't. It's pretty easy to understand why the old expression, give me liberty or give me death. It's like, who wants to live to just subsist in an environment of oppression and official totalitarianism? I mean, what is it about life in an environment like that's even worth living? Answer: nothing. That's why this country was formed. And just because some rats got in there and decided to twist it to their own ends doesn't mean we abandon our country. We don't. What we need to do is we need to abandon stupid and evil ideas and put some intelligent people in there, find out who's really running this country, find out what it is about these so-called leaders that they're so easily blackmailed over, and then eject them from government summarily and permanently to where they can never run for any political office ever again. And not to mention, seize their assets and their cash and drive them into destitution. That would be appropriate punishment. That would not be cruel nor unusual punishment. But what's happening to this young man is just wrong. To cut him off from his family like that, not let him see his kids, and in that horrible prison facility, this is just cruel, and it's wrong. So look, I go back. See, you got me all jacked up now. You brought out the Italian. Hey, bastardos, you know.
Hey, I shared that with you. I'm half Italian.
No, good. Well, paisana.
That's right.
Yeah, well, look, the Italians didn't do much. They just civilized most of the world, starting with the Romans. That whole Catholic Church thing, that's a subject for another time. I thump this little bobblehead of the Pope almost daily, just because I can. But no, the Italians brought a lot to the party. And they still do, as you have done. So, Maria, I repeat, if Mr. Snook would like to contact us, you have our contact information, so please get him to us. And we can at least talk with him and find out what we can talk about on the program that will not endanger his initiative in any way. And we'll keep it going as best we can for as long as we can, as long as you got the legs to carry us. Now you brought out the Irish in me too. There isn't any really, except on occasion.
Well, that's great. No, that's really great. He'll be an excellent person for you to talk to. He's just awesome.
Now, look, now I got to tell you something. Whoever is, and I want you to do this, and I also want to tell people out there, if you don't have any kind of a virus software, wait. Write it down on a piece of paper. Don't make a digital note. Just use a legal pad. That would be appropriate in this case. Yeah. And write down the free SchaefferCox.com website. But do not go there until Maria contacts her IT people and finds out what it is on that site that is attacking people who are going to it. Because I've been attacked 3 times, even after I took it down. You know, even after I closed the page, it still tried to hit me. That virus has been put there deliberately. So give them a heads up and just wait. And when it's clear, I'll put the word out and we'll drive people to the site. All right?
That's great. Yep, I will. I'll stay in touch with you, and thanks so much. This is excellent. I've heard lots about your program from people. So.
Well, don't believe everything you hear. All right?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. So are you, and I commend you for your bravery in being willing to come on with your face and this is you. This is her name. This is the lady, and this is the problem. So we applaud you, and we will back you as best we can.
All right.
God bless. Take care.
Good. Thanks, John. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You know the old expression, when they came for this bunch, I didn't say anything. When they came for this other bunch, I didn't say anything. And then when they came for that bunch over there, way over yonder, I didn't say anything. And then they came for me. And there wasn't anybody left to say anything in protest of my being taken away. You know, reading is a good thing. I recommend the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Oh, it's a real thick one. But when the Soviets were hauling people off to these iceberg gulags, Solzhenitsyn made the observation, nobody said, help me, they're arresting me, I've done nothing, they're taking me to the gulag, help me. Nobody said anything. He also wrote that what if, instead of quivering in the darkness, waiting for the smashing knock on the door in the middle of the night, what if we had availed ourselves of every means of our defense so that every secret policeman who went out at night on his rounds had to wonder if he would return home again after his rounds were completed? Why did we quiver in fear? Why did we not take action? My fellow Americans, I have said this ad nauseum, and I will say it until we have all purged ourselves of that denial that makes us feel nauseated and bilious. We have been lazy, non-hacking, non-engaged, mouths firmly affixed to the teat of American largesse. We have become a bunch of fat you-know-whats. You see, fataz is a state of mind. A fataz is a self-entitled, ice-cream-eating little twit who thinks the government is completely competent and capable to handle all of our needs. These people need to be left to fend for themselves. We who are capable need to take action while we may. The longer we wait, the more tech they get, and the less you are worth. Your job will be replaced by a robot. You are now being told you will buy health insurance. You will. It's too expensive for you to go without health insurance, which is the number one thing that a number of Marxists, particularly Alinsky, wrote is the vital linchpin to the Marxist movement, the Marxist communist movement. It's what you're experiencing now. President Obama's conduct, from his speeches to his executive orders, smack of the conduct of a little banana republic dictator. I think we should send him to the land of the banana. And there he can be like the little turtle who wanted to be king from the Dr. Seuss books. The little turtle who insisted that he wanted a better view of everything. So he made himself king, and he made the turtles stack themselves on top of each other so he could go up to the top. Until one day, the turtle on the very bottom burped, and his burp shook the throne of the king, and down the little twit fell, splat. Right? And the story wraps up with, now he's king of the mud, for that's all he can see. Get mad. Stay mad. I don't mean mad as in crazy, I mean angry. You should be angry. No violence, unless it comes at you. And when it comes at you, you push back. This is our country. This country does not belong to a criminal cabal that we simply cannot shift, let alone eradicate. They are criminals. They are practiced. The product is evil. Reminds me of a song. You may hear it someday soon. Until we meet again, exercise caution in your daily affairs. God's sake, sharpen those critical thinking skills. Praise him in the name of the Lord Jesus. Eyes up always. Make ready for what's to come. Baby, it's coming. Get ready. See ya.